Hi, welcome to this very particular webinar. I'm so excited to have you in this very presentation. So we're going to dive in real quick and then dig deep into the concept of the PMP, that is the Project Management Professional. So it's good to have you. And then, of course, I'm looking forward to having a very exciting experience. Welcome to my class. Here, we're going to be taking a look at introduction to the PMP. It means that in the very first part of our conversation, we shall take a look at key definitions. It shall also take a look at some of the basic concepts that we use, and then also help you to also understand the examination requirements, just in case you choose to take the certification exam at the end of your project management training. So first, it's nice that we talk about some of the key concepts that we typically use, especially as it pertains to the PMP. And then I'm very sure you've heard about some of these concepts before, one way or the other. Some of them you may already know, and some of them you probably might not be very clear about. So that's why we're starting from the very basic. So first, we shall talk about what we mean by PMI. PMI simply means Project Management Institute. Project Management Institute is the body responsible for certification in project management, known as the PMP. The Project Management Institute is based in the United States of America. It is a global organization. They also set the standard for project management. Their certifications are recognized worldwide. The PMI also has members from over 190 countries. Being a member of the PMI would help you connect to a global network of professionals. It would also help you to effectively be able to hone your skills, because once in a while, PMI organizes conventions, webinars, events that can enable you build your skill, especially in project management and some other field. Next, we'll talk about the PMP. PMP simply stands for Project Management Professional. This is a credential or a certification that is offered by the PMI. It will certify you as a project manager and also prove that you have the experience as well as knowledge to lead and to direct projects. The PMP is arguably the world's leading project management certification. And you will notice that especially people who work in different industries like construction industry, IT, oil and gas, you will notice that a lot of them who work here as project managers or in project roles usually have the PMP certification because of the global acceptance of the certification. So the certification is very, very valuable, especially in this part of the world. You want to work in the oil and gas sector, in the construction sector, even in the, emerging and burgeoning tech sector. The PMP certification is very, very, very important. So if you notice in companies like Shell, for example, Dangote Group, you will notice that it is very, very common to find PMP certification holders there, because that's one key thing that demonstrates that they have the skills to manage large as well as complex projects. When you get PMP certified, there's now what we refer to as continuing certification requirement, also known as the CCR. The continuing certification requirement is basically a way that PMI uses to ensure that you do not abandon your certification. I remember back then when we were still in high school, typically after our examinations, we'll break our pen and then we'll say, for the rest of the holidays, we're not going to touch our books or we're not going to do any reading anymore. PMI does not want you to do same. PMI does not want a situation where you get certified and then that's it. You don't do anything again about project management. You don't develop yourself. You don't build or enhance your knowledge or skill in project management. That's why PMI put into place what we call the CCR, and that's the continuing certification requirement. Continuing certification requirement simply is a program that would help you to be able to maintain your PMP credential, to be able to grow and develop your career. Any hour spent in personal development would earn you what we refer to as professional development unit. That's what we call the PDU. If, for example, you take another course, or for example, you take part in an event organized by PMI, or it could also be a work-related activity, as long as it is helping to hone and develop your skill, those are things that can earn you what we refer to as professional development unit. After you obtain the PMP certification, you need to maintain your certification by earning 60 professional development units every 3 years. This is, of course, to make sure that you stay up to date with latest practices in project management, then also make sure that as much as possible, you keep developing yourself. So that's part of the reason why we mention here that your PMP credential, it means if you get certified today, your PMP is valid for 3 years. And within those 3 years, you are expected to report what we refer to as 60 professional development units, which of course translates into 20 PDUs on an annual basis. I want you to consider how being certified can open new opportunities for you, both locally and internationally. Our PMP full certification course that is offered by CL Consulting will prepare you not just to pass the certification exam, which of course we give a guarantee of. I mean, if you don't pass the exam, we'll refund your money, no stories about it. But beyond that, it will also help you to build your skill in order to excel in your role as a project manager globally. And that's part of the reason why the training includes use of softwares like Microsoft Project as well as Primavera P6. So let's now talk about the PMP examination itself. Basically, what do you expect on the day of the exam? The PMP exam duration is 3 hours, 50 minutes. So that is 10 minutes short of 4 hours. And within the 3 hours, 50 minutes, you are expected to answer a total of 180 questions. Out of these 180 questions, only 160 of them are scored. There are about 20 other questions that are considered pre-test questions. Pre-test questions simply means that PMI is simply considering asking these questions in subsequent tests. But the truth of the matter is you will not know which one is pre-test question and then which ones are scored questions. So when it now comes to grading, PMI grades the examination based on what we refer to as below target, target, above target, and then also needs improvement. This grading is done based on the 3 domains that we have in the PMP. So for example, in the PMP exam, there are what we refer to as 3 domains, and those 3 domains that we have in the PMP are, we have the people domain, then we have the process domain, and then also we have the business environment domain. So the grading is done based on these domains. If the person scores below target, it simply means that the person did not pass that particular domain. Target simply means, yes, the person passed that domain on the average. Then above target is equivalent to distinction. The person did not just pass that particular domain, but the person distinguished him or herself in his or her performance. Then also needs improvement is the worst case scenario. Now, because this is basically saying that no, the individual did not pass the domain at all. It is quite necessary for you to understand that PMI does not publish the final scores. And PMI does also not publish what the pass mark is for the PMP examination. At the end of the exam, you will either see a pass or a fail. And this is, of course, determined by a combination of these grades. For example, there are chances that you may do well in some certain domains and then not as well in other domains and you would pass. There are also scenarios where you fail one domain and maybe pass 2 other domains and you also discover that you did not pass the examination. So it is typically a combination of all of these that PMI actually uses to be able to determine the final grade. Remember we mentioned earlier on that there are 3 domains in the PMP, which are the people domain, the process domain, and the business environment domain. Most of the questions you're going to see in the PMP exam will come from the process domain. In fact, over half of the total number of questions in the exam will be from the process domain. We're going to take a look at that much more later in the course of this, our webinar. The next set of domain that carries the highest number of questions, of course, is the people domain. About 42% of your questions will come from the people domain, which is roughly about 76 of the total number of questions. The final domain is the business environment domain. So the business environment domain has the least number of questions. About 8% of your questions would come from the business environment domain. Beyond that, each of these domains is further broken down into 3 project management life cycles, which are the predictive, the agile, as well as the hybrid. The predictive is also known as the traditional methodology, while the agile is also known as the adaptive methodology, and hybrid is now a combination of these methodologies. If you're answering questions, say for example, in people's domain, there will be questions from predictive approach, there will be questions from agile approach, there will also be questions from the hybrid approach. For the process domain, same thing, you will see questions from predictive, from agile, as well as from hybrid. So the point we're trying to make here is the questions are according to the domains, and then within the domains as well, the questions also emanate based on these different project management life cycle. According to the last exam content outline, PMI says that 50% of the questions would be based on predictive approach. So in essence, that 50% of the exam questions would, of course, come from the traditional project management methodology, while 23% of the questions would come from the agile methodology, 27% of the questions will come from the hybrid methodology. These are basically part of the things you need to put into consideration, especially with regards to preparing for the examination itself. Like I mentioned earlier on, taking part in our full PMP course will cover these domains in depth and provide you with practical strategies to excel in each of these domains. Our training will help you to master these domains and will not only help you pass the exam, but then also will help to make you a much more effective project manager in your day-to-day roles. Now that you have an understanding about what the PMP is all about, a fair understanding about what to expect in the examination, we need to dive in proper into the content of this particular webinar. It's going to be divided into two major chapters. The first chapter will be an introduction to project management, and then in the second chapter, we're going to be taking a look at the project management framework. I particularly like the second chapter because there you're going to have a deeper insight into the domains as well as the different project management life cycles that we talked about earlier on, and it promises to be a very, very exciting one. Don't also forget that at the end of each chapter, there are certain quizzes that I think you should try your hands on. Trying your hands on these quizzes would help you to effectively solidify your knowledge in this field. So in the very first part of our introduction to project management, we're going to be taking a look at what we refer to as projects. Then we shall also define program. We shall also talk about what we mean by portfolio, and then also talk about the role that you have as a project manager. Beyond that, other concepts like the definition for project management would also be covered in the course of this conversation. Join me as we dive in. This is exactly how PMI defines project. PMI says that project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. This particular definition highlights two key characteristics of a project. One is the fact that projects are temporary and then they produce something unique. So projects are temporary and they produce something unique. When we say something is temporary, we're simply saying that it has a defined start and end time. That's essentially what it means to say that something is temporary. In essence, it is not something that goes on indefinitely. So let's say, for example, you are involved in the development of a project. Let's say you're building a mobile application, for example, for a bank in Nigeria. So the project begins when you start gathering your project requirements, ends when you launch the application to the public. So you can see starting gathering requirements, that marks the start of the project, and then the launching to the public, that marks the end of the project, and that's exactly what we refer to as being temporary. In other words, it must have a definite start and then also a definite end. We also mentioned that projects will produce unique product, service, or result. In other words, there are no two projects that are the same. Every project will come up with something new. Every project comes up with something that hitherto was not there, even if it is an improvement project. Because sometimes some persons will say, okay, what if we are carrying out, let's say, for example, a renovation of our office building? Yes, that's a project. But notice that in the course of that renovation, there could be additions, there could be modifications, there could be removal of certain things from the building itself. That is what is unique about that particular endeavor. The fact that it brings about something hitherto that was not there. And that's why we mentioned that it's undertaking to create a unique product, service, or result. So the product, service, or result, all of this refers to the outcome of the project. In other words, something that has not been created before. And like I mentioned, the outcome of every project is typically unique. Sometimes some persons will ask me, okay, so what if, for example, we're building a housing estate, and then you have residential buildings, for example, and then all of them have the same design. And the person will say, is that unique? Or let's say, for example, you're building different bridges, and these bridges across different locations, they all have the same design. Does that make it unique? The truth of the matter is no two projects are the same. So even if a company builds similar types of buildings or builds similar types of bridges, each of these buildings or bridges is unique in its own way because one, it has its own location, it also has its own design, it also has its own peculiar construction challenges. All of these are part of the things that actually make that particular project unique. A typical example of a project would be, of course, let's say we're building a mobile app, or say, for example, you're building a house, or say, for example, you're having an event, say, for example, a wedding event. And these are some of the things that we may consider as project. Beyond project, there's also what we now refer to as operation. So if you notice earlier on, we defined project as a temporary endeavor, an undertaking to create a unique product, service, or result. But then when we talk about operations, operations are continuous, ongoing, they are repetitive, and they produce the same result. So in essence, I want you to take a look at operations as the day-to-day activities that keeps the business running. So that's why sometimes we refer to it as business as usual. For example, providing customer services. For example, accounting functions. For example, selling, marketing. These are things that you do on a repetitive and continuous basis. And that's now what we refer to as operations. If we talk about project creates, while operations maintain. So what that simply means is that anytime you do a project, at the end of that particular project itself, say for example, it's for a business, it will produce a unique product, service, or result. So let's say, for example, as an organization, we decide to open a branch in another location. The process of establishing the branch is a project. But then after the branch has been established, we now need to begin to run the branch. We begin to do some set of repetitive activities. We begin to do our marketing. You begin to do your sales. You begin to carry out certain other functions. The process of doing that is what we now refer to as operations. These are some of the things, examples of project. Let's say, for example, we're developing a new charger for a cell phone. Say, for example, a popular phone accessories company like Oraimo, for example, decides to design or come up with a particular energy efficient charger that would also charge your phone very, very fast. So this particular project, of course, would involve things like research and development. It would also involve things like design, testing, and then also building it. So the process of manufacturing and doing all of these things is what we refer to as project. At the end of the day, the unique result will be the new charger product that they now bring into existence. And that's what we term a project. And let's say, for example, expanding the service offering of a consulting firm. So, for example, imagine us as an organization, SEAL Consulting. Let's say we decide to add other products like digital marketing services as one of the products that we offer. This project also will involve setting up new services, training our staff members, ensuring that they have the knowledge in marketing services, then also launching it to our clients. The project, of course, will start with we planning on these new services, which is digital marketing services that we hope to provide, up until when we launch it, that is, make it available to our client. Aside from that, merging of two organizations can also be considered as a project. For example, recently we had a situation where Access Bank and Diamond Bank merged. That's a typical example of what we refer to as a project because it will involve a whole lot of processes. The process of combining their operations, their systems, their cultures, all of this will be managed as a project. It is temporary and unique because at the end of the day, it will create a new unified organization. Other examples of project can include implementing a new accounting system. For example, hitherto we're keeping our records manually, and we now decide to implement a new accounting system in order to digitize our accounting process. And that's a project. Or you're renovating our office space. Of course, this one is clear that from the start, we need to create a plan and then a design as to how to be able to do the renovation, end it with the completion of the renovation itself. So the result here will be a newly renovated office. Examples of other projects can include developing a research around a particular topic. For example, a research institution might try to study the impact of a particular policy in Nigeria. Let's say, for example, the removal of fuel subsidy. So you have a research institution that studies the impact of removal of fuel subsidy on Nigerians. So the project would include things like data collection, analysis, publishing the findings as well. The process of doing all of that is what you consider as a project. And the unique result in this case would, of course, be the new research paper or the work that is turned in or published by this research institution. You can also have building a new parking lot as well as creating a new watch for children. All of these are examples of what we may refer to as projects. So these examples actually illustrate how diverse projects can be. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the definition for project management. So if you notice, this is a combination of two words. One is project, and then the other one is management. And when we talk about management, management has to do with a systematic approach or a methodical approach to planning, guiding, directing, organizing, then also monitoring and controlling. So if we now apply it to project, that's now what you call project management. It is basically a methodical approach to planning and guiding your project processes from start to finish. So there are certain questions that project management answers. For example, what problem are we solving? How are we going to solve the problem? What is our plan for solving the problem? How will we know when we are done? And then how well did the project go? These are a few critical questions that project management answers. Next, we're going to take a look at the definition for project management according to the PMI. PMI defines project management as the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet project requirements. This definition emphasizes that project management is not just about doing tasks, it's also about doing them in a structured way that ensures that the project objectives are met. So if we take out each of the components of this definition one after the other, remember, we said that project management has to do with the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques. If, for example, we're carrying out a project, it's going to involve a wide range of knowledge, skills, along with using specific tools and techniques to be able to carry out the project. And let's say, for example, you're doing a construction project. And if you're carrying out a construction project, obviously you need to have a knowledge of construction. You need to have a knowledge of certain engineering principles that will enable you to effectively be able to deliver that particular construction project. That's what we refer to as knowledge. Aside from that, you also need certain skills, especially some soft skills, because here you're now like a leader of the project itself. You're going to be needing things like negotiation skills. You're going to be needing things like conflict management skills. You're going to be needing things like emotional intelligence skills. And then aside from that, you're also going to be using things like time management skills. That's essentially what we refer to as skills here. Then to effectively manage the project, you may also need certain tools like Microsoft Project or maybe Primavera P6. If you notice earlier on, when I was talking about the full course, I told you that it is part of what we offer. We're going to teach you how to use both the Microsoft Project and Primavera P6. These are tools that we use in managing projects. And then also you apply certain techniques. Techniques, for example, like what we refer to as a critical path method, your network diagram, your Gantt chart. All of these are techniques that can help you to ensure that the project is delivered on time and then also within budget. The ultimate goal of project management is to meet the project requirement. This could be maybe delivering a product, for example, coming up with a service, achieving a specific result. For example, in an IT project, the meeting requirements could be delivering a software or an application. In a construction project, to meet the project requirements would be delivering a building. Or let's say, for example, in an event project, meeting the project requirements would be to successfully organize that event. So to enable us now fully achieve the project, there are certain processes that we typically go through in implementing projects. They will include processes like we have what we refer to as initiating and then planning, then also executing, then monitoring and controlling, as well as closing. We also have what we refer to as knowledge areas, from project integration to scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, as well as stakeholders. All of these things are what are detailed in our full PMP course. However, all of these things are what you integrate, you apply them or you bring them together. And that's part of the reason why we say that it is accomplished through the appropriate application and integration of the project management processes. All those initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling and closing that I mentioned, as well as knowledge areas. all those integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resource, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholders, these are what constitute the knowledge areas. So it will enable the organization to effectively be able to execute the project. Next, we shall take a look at the definition for program. I want you to take a look at the program as when you have related projects or similar projects. PMI defines a program as a group of related projects, sub-programs, and program activities managed in a coordinated way to obtain benefits not available from managing them individually. So what this simply means is that if you group some set of related projects together, you can manage them effectively and achieve greater benefits than if you choose to manage them individually. So let's say, for example, we're building a mini housing estate. If we decide to build all of this, each of these houses can be considered a separate project. However, we can decide to group all of these together into a single program. And if we group it into a single program, the overall management can be more efficient and resources can also be shared. And then also you will notice that we can have what we refer to as economies of scale. Because we're buying things in large quantities, there's a chance it's going to reduce our cost. Because of the shared resources as well, that can also reduce our cost and then also our time. Centrally managing it also can help improve the efficiency of these endeavors. So when we now talk about the definition of program management, we say that program management has to do with the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to a program to meet the program requirements and in order to obtain benefits and control not available by managing the projects individually. So let's say, for example, the Ministry of Health decides to launch a national healthcare initiative in Nigeria. This, of course, can involve multiple projects. For example, building hospitals, implementing new health information system, training health workers as well as professionals. By managing these projects as part of a single program, by managing all of these projects together, that will help the ministry to ensure that all of these projects align with the overall goal of improving the national healthcare system and then also reducing the risk of mismanagement. So some of the benefits of doing what we refer to as program management would of course include reduced risk, economies of scale. It can also help you to reduce your costs and then also even to effectively manage your project. It can also help you with shared resources and altogether improved management. Beyond the word program, there's also what we refer to as a portfolio. And PMI defines portfolio as a collection of projects, programs, sub-portfolios, and operations managed as a group to achieve strategic objectives. Portfolio encompasses all the initiatives, activities that an organization undertakes. Literally speaking, everything that the organization does that aligns with the broader business goal or objective of the organization is what we refer to as the organization's portfolio. Everything that we do as an organization or as an entity that aligns with our strategic business goal is basically what makes up our portfolio. Projects that you have within a portfolio may not necessarily be interdependent or related. In essence, they don't necessarily need to be related. So in a nutshell, all of the things we have mentioned, we can actually sum it up with this particular pyramid. At the bottom of this pyramid, we have what we refer to as project. And then right above the pyramid, we have what we call a program. At the top, we now have our portfolio. And remember, we said a group of related projects make up program. Both project as well as program make up a portfolio. The person responsible for managing the portfolio is typically known as a portfolio manager. So this person can be a company CEO, president, or a senior management role. The person responsible for managing the program is known as a program manager. Then the person responsible for managing the project, typically this person is referred to as a project manager. Project managers report to program managers who in turn report to portfolio manager. A typical example of a portfolio, for example, is the Dangote Group. Notice that Dangote Group has interest in cement production, sugar refining, real estate, and then, of course, recently, oil and gas. These are different industries, but they all contribute towards Dangote's overall strategic goal of business expansion and diversification. So that's exactly what makes it a portfolio. And that's why we mentioned that portfolio helps you to achieve a strategic business goal or objective. So if we further put this together, we can have a situation where a portfolio can actually be a lot more complex than what you have here. For example, if you take a look at this particular diagram, you will notice that the top here represents the portfolio, which is of course a collection of various programs. And sometimes even within a portfolio, you can have a sub-portfolio program and then also other projects as well. And for you to have a sub-portfolio, it means it has programs and projects under it, while a program, of course, can also have a sub-program and then also projects and other works under it. So what this diagram is simply showing is that as much as possible, it can get so complex. A portfolio can get so huge and so complex that even within a portfolio, you can have sub-portfolios, and then also even within a program, you may even have sub-programs. So let's say, for example, Nigeria decides to host the Olympic Games. So if Nigeria decides to host the Olympic Games, don't forget that the Olympic Games is a very huge portfolio because it will literally require an improvement to the national infrastructure. So this infrastructure, of course, can include things like transportation, communication, entertainment, hospitality, as well as even the sporting event itself. These are sub-portfolios within the overall portfolio of national infrastructure upgrades to enable Nigeria effectively host the Olympic Games. In these sub-portfolios, like I've mentioned, for example, infrastructure, you can now have things like road programs, you can now have things like building programs, you can now have things like sporting complex as well as arena programs. So here, these are now some set of related projects. Those are what we refer to as programs. If we now go into the road program itself, like I've just mentioned, you will notice again, there are different roads that we need to build. You say, for example, highways. Then also, we also need to build bridges. So you can see, under the road program, we have also broken it further into sub-programs. One that will focus on roads and another one that will focus on bridges. And then under the road sub-program, you can now have different road projects. For example, connecting different locations in Nigeria. And then under the bridge sub-program, you can also have different bridges across different entities as well as rivers that you may have across the nation. So the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes a portfolio can be so complex that even within a portfolio, you can have a sub-portfolio as well as program, and then also have a sub-program even within that particular program as well. Doing all of this in order to achieve a strategic goal or objective, that's now what we refer to as a portfolio. So in the very first chapter of this conversation, we're taking a look at key definitions, like the definition for project, which we said is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. We also talked about program, which we said is a group of related projects. Then we mentioned portfolio, which we said is a combination of both project as well as program. We also talked about operations, which we said they are a set of continuous, ongoing, and routine activities that we do, especially in order to keep the business running. All of these and many more were part of what we discussed in the very first chapter of this webinar. I hope you found it quite informative. Take a look at some of the questions you have in this quiz, and you let me know what you think is the correct answer. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this session has been quite informative for you. In the next session, we're going to be taking a look at project management domains as well as framework. You will not want to miss this because this will dive deeper into various domains that we have in project management and then also be able to give you better understanding about things that make up project management, which is of course the PMP. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.